Welcome to another video, Purple Political Talk here. Today is Friday, July 23rd, 2021, and today we're going to be discussing the 2024 presidential elections and taking a look at a matchup that I actually find as the most interesting matchup between, I would say, two of the most unpopular candidates currently in the United States. When you look at at the big scheme of things, when you look at and put the whole country into perspective. This is a matchup between former President Donald Trump and incumbent Vice President Kamala Harris. So this is going to be a very interesting matchup. But before we do begin, I want to remind you guys to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to be updated with our latest content. And I also want to remind you that channel memberships are now open for Purple Political Talk. If you want to become a channel member and support the channel, that is a great way to support the channel. And in that spirit, I do also want to give a very big thank you to our Purple Political Talk Gold channel member, David Maxwell. Thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do it without you. So now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's get started with the video. So I think that this matchup would just be interesting in how both of the candidates have really garnered senses of unpopularity. For Kamala Harris, it's mostly the way she runs herself as a politician, where she could be doing a lot more and doing certain things that could help her gain popularity amongst American voters, which, if she hopes to run for president in any time in the near future, I think is something that could be useful for her. While Trump, I mean, it's a completely different scenario, and we have talked about the big thing that has affected Trump was, one, it's two main things. One, the media he has. Both social media and mainstream media have pretty much come completely against Trump. And that's always going to be hard when you're running against the media because, communication is going to be the key to the White House. The second thing is, and I think the most prevalent, is the end of his presidency ended in a very tumultuous way. It was a very, bad end to the presidency. And that might leave sour taste in some Americans' minds. So it's really the battle of unpopularity in this case. And it's going to be who can appeal to certain groups of voters better in certain regions of the country. With all of this being said, though, this does not mean, and again, this is very far out. So this does not mean that Donald Trump or Kamala Harris will get the Republican and Democratic nominations. However, again, this is just hypothetical, so take it with a grain of salt. So I've just filled in all our safe states. These are states that I would say go by more than 15%. We have Donald Trump at 125 to Kamala Harris's 183. Let's get started talking about the toss-up states, or the states in gray. The states that I think would go by 15% or less, starting with the likely states for the Democratic Party, which are states that I expect to go between 5 and 15% for the Democrats. So taking a look at these races, I do think that in places like New Mexico, Virginia, Colorado, even with how unpopular Kamala Harris is, one of the groups I think she really does well is the Democratic establishment. She's going to do great in Virginia. She has that identity politics side that it's going to help her with certain groups of voters, especially in the suburbs. Now, she has another thing that she might appeal to a certain group of suburban voters, but overall, her suburban appeal is not as strong as other candidates. Donald Trump doesn't have the best suburban appeal either. However, against someone like Kamala Harris, he does have a chance of lowering these margins. I would say that with almost any normal Democrat, Virginia, Colorado, New Mexico, these seats would probably end up going by around 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%. However, with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump on the ticket, I do think a state like New Mexico will definitely come down, and these are probably going to end up staying with where they're usually fall. So, I mean, it just comes down that these states are just Democratic establishment, and Kamala Harris really does do a good job at appealing to that sector. Now, let's go on and talk about the likely states for Donald Trump. Again, 5 to 15%. And I think for Donald Trump, he does have a somewhat stronger suit of states here. He has states that are considered or were considered very close swing states in the past that the Republican Party has, started to solidify. And especially someone like Trump could do very well in these states. Iowa, Ohio, Texas, Florida. These are all states that, have been shifting a lot. In Iowa and Ohio, it's come down mostly to the fact that there is a group of, rural voters and evangelical voters that Trump has really done a good job to appealing to. And in Ohio, it's more of the manufacturing workers that, they've really come in clutch for Donald Trump. And with that, he's been able to extend the margins. We saw a very big victory for him in these two states in 2020. And I think if he runs again in 2024, especially against someone like Kamala Harris, who has low appeal to, Midwestern voters, we might end up seeing that victory for Donald Trump in those states. As for Texas and Florida, I do think that these states are probably going to end up going in the likely margin. And these are two states that actually could end up going by the lean margin less than 5%. However, I think as things stand right now, and especially who is on the ticket, I think that Donald Trump would win that. In Texas, you need a very conservative or moderate, rather, Democrat that is really popular and could appeal to people to win there. I don't think Kamala Harris offers that, so I think it's going to end up being a Trump plus 5, Trump plus 6 state. While in Florida, I think that while the Republicans have made some exceptional gains in the state, we still have to think Florida itself is not only Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade County really does have a big impact, but Florida has very big counties that people do not talk about, and some of those counties are trending Democratic. So with those losses that the Democrats are having in Miami-Dade, they're being made up somewhere else. So I think they're probably gonna end up going for Trump because how Kamala Harris is unpopular. But I just want to put that out there that this is a state that could truly go lean margin. I live in Florida and I know how Florida politics works. And I really do see Florida, being somewhere around the 5% mark, 6% mark at most, with, against other candidates, we could see Florida going by 4 or 3 points like it did in 2020. So now that we have all our likely states out of the way, let's move on to the lean states for the Democrats. These are states that go between 5 and 1.5% for the Democratic Party. And truly for Kamala Harris, I think that she has a couple. I think that she ends up winning in Minnesota. Minnesota is a state that, over and over again has trended a lot more Democratic. And I think that it's a state that people should take a look at because it's starting to have more liberal support. Now, I mean, the 2020 election was a great example of that. Biden won in here by around 7 points when it was a really close state in 2016. Now, I think another thing that really is impactful here is that you do have some Republican trends in the state, especially in the western side of the state. However, that does not mean that the whole state is going to turn around. I think it's still probably going to end up being, Democratic. With Kamala Harris on the ticket, I do see it falling under the 5-point mark, probably around 4, maybe 5% at most for Kamala Harris. The Democrats are just very popular in Minnesota, and I think it's a state that a lot of people underestimate the Democrats in. Going on to another state, the state of Nevada. The state of Nevada is a state that I do think that, is a state that could considerably end up going more towards the Republicans in the future, just based on where the state parties are going and how trends are going with Hispanic voters. However, I do think that overall, the state of Nevada probably is going to end up going by 2 or 3 points to the Democrats, just where if you just take a look at, 2020 results, it was a little bit closer, but it's just politically solidified as a Democratic state, and I think those trends will continue. So, with the lean states for the Democrats, we already have Kamala Harris at 227. Let's move on to Donald Trump's lean states between 1.5% and 5%. I do think against Kamala Harris, we could end up seeing Trump winning in places like Arizona and North Carolina by a margin of, around 1.5%, 2%. I think that Kamala Harris is not the candidate for Arizona. She probably isolates some of the suburban voters. And what would we likely see in this scenario? We're going to probably see a scenario somewhat similar to what we saw in 2016, excitement and turnout-wise. Neither of these candidates are insanely through the roof popular, right? So we're probably, and I always have said this, Kamala Harris is Hillary Clinton 2.0. So in that way, we're probably going to end up seeing Kamala Harris underperform in suburban areas where she needs to. And I think Arizona is one of those places with the issue down at the border. I know it's not really affecting Arizona as much, but that was one of Trump's marquee issues. And I think Arizona, it was somewhat popular. I just think that he lost Arizona this time around, mostly because of pandemic stuff. And I do think against Kamala Harris, he definitely has a possibility of winning. In North Carolina, though, I do think that this state could probably end up falling, 1.5%, 2% as well. Kamala Harris could probably make some gains with African-American voters, and especially like in Raleigh and Durham. Very big African-American centers in the state of North Carolina. However, I do think another thing we must consider is the polarization. while some suburbs, and most urban areas are Democratic. I mean, or rather, while a lot of the suburbs are turning more Democratic, most urban areas and a lot of rural areas are becoming more Republican. So I think that, of course, there's going to be more people in the suburbs. But once you add up all the urban vote that's switching and all the, rural vote, it adds up. And I think that at the end of the day, against someone like Kamala Harris, this comes out to help out Donald Trump. Going on to the two congressional districts, I do think that both of these places Trump could probably win by lean margins, if not more in Maine's second district. Again, I'm gonna just leave these kind of like up for interpretation because we do not know how these states are gonna redistrict these. They could gerrymander and make those electoral votes safe for them. I mean, it's something that could happen, and I do think that if they gerrymander, of course, we're probably gonna see them split off 1-1, with Nebraska taking that Republican seat, while Maine taking the Democratic seat. However, if it stands how it is right now, I do think that Donald Trump wins both of these districts. Biden did win in Nebraska, but Donald Trump won there the first time against Hillary Clinton. Now, the thing about Biden is that he's moderate enough to the point where he can really appeal to those voters in that district. And I think Kamala Harris really fails to do that. Kamala Harris is someone who's unpopular, who, while she might have that identity politics that, really resonates with a lot of the voters, she's really going to have some trouble, really like appealing at certain levels with those voters. Now let's move on to the closest of the closest states, the toss-up states, which I consider to be the tilt states. I think that these states would end up going by less than 1.5%. And I think it comes down to the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and New Hampshire to win the race. And before we classify those states, Donald Trump has 247 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 227. So, I think that in the Rust Belt, we're going to see a very strong Trump performance, even if it is narrowly. I think that Trump could win in Wisconsin. I think he could win in Pennsylvania, and he could win in New Hampshire. That gives him the race. I do think that Donald Trump is probably going to end up gaining the support in these areas. And compared to Harris, he probably has more support amongst those working class voters in Western Pennsylvania and, in areas that are outside the city in Wisconsin. And I do think that Donald Trump has that message and a lot better appeal compared to Kamala Harris in those states. And in New Hampshire, I really do think that it comes down more to a populist angle where, I think that Trump actually could appeal to those voters. He's probably going to have to, calm down his campaign. But I don't see voters in New Hampshire really liking Kamala Harris that much. Again, I think that since they're college-educated voters, they're really going to look into Trump's, past as president. And I think that's something that might end up hurting him and actually could tilt the race towards Kamala Harris. But, Kamala Harris's unpopularity is really going to be something that is going to hurt the Democrats at a nationwide level. And New Hampshire is going to be one of the states where they are going to feel that. Going on to the last two states that we have, I do think that Kamala Harris does win in Michigan, and she does win in Georgia. Georgia is a state that's probably more Democratic than people think at this point. Biden won there. The 2 Senate races were won there. I think African-American turnout is very important. And Kamala Harris does have somewhat of that appeal in the state of Georgia. With the help of Stacey Abrams and other Democratic operatives in the state, I do think that Kamala Harris is probably going to be, able enough to end up winning these states, giving her a good 16 electoral votes. Michigan, it comes down also to, the minority vote in the city, and, the suburbs and things like that I do think Kamala Harris might end up narrowly holding on. So this brings us to our final electoral count of Donald Trump at 280 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 258. I want to see what you guys think about this map. Tell me down in the comments what you guys think. And I really hope that you guys enjoyed the video. If so, please give it a huge thumbs up. Like, subscribe, turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. And if you enjoy the videos and you think that someone else might enjoy my videos, you could share it, and that will help the channel grow immensely. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Thank you, and goodbye.